Saturday, Joe Biden marched into South Carolina. He put up, as of now, with 95% of votes in, 126,321 votes to Marianne Williams' 2726, and Dean Phillips, who came in third, 2,239, which brings Joe Biden a whopping total of 96.2%, and he gets all 55 delegates. Before we even move further, what was your reaction to the results out of South Carolina this past weekend?
It's funny because we talked about Dean Phillips last week, and he's obviously been the most kind of public, quote unquote, opponent to Joe Biden. You said he finished third. What's fascinating about that, John, is it's a one man race. So it's not if you finish second in a one man race, you finish third in a one man race, which is not ideal. And I think he went on Twitter and was saying that he was proud and it was a good step, and he's see you in Michigan and all this stuff, and just pathetic. I think we're wasting money, we're wasting time, just for Dean Phillips to get a couple of minutes in the spotlight, which is unfortunate. But look, we talked about it last week. We made predictions as far as what was going to happen. I think this is by and far the best case scenario. If Biden wasn't in the 90s, I think it would have been a bigger story. I think anything over 90 would have been fine. The fact that he's closer to 100 than to 90 is great. I think it pushes back on all the narratives that he's not popular, that he's losing the black vote, and you can speak to that more anecdotally than I can. But I think the general public has felt more of a responsibility than normal, and I think that South Carolina proves that. I think he's popular, and if he's not popular, they're still going to vote for him because he's what's best for the country. And I think that's the biggest narrative I take away is the general electorate, as far as Democrats, are very responsible voters after 2016 specifically. So that's my big takeaway is thank you, South Carolina. Thank you for all those people who came out, voted. I know turnout. I don't know what the numbers turnout wise compared to other years, but a convincing win for Biden, I think, should put to rest a little of these kind of hot takes, if you will.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Um, and I hate to jump into this early because we want to give Biden his flowers, and he deserves his flowers. He needs his flowers. Um, but this morning, and just so you know, we are recording this on a Sunday, but no, NBC wasted no times coming out and announcing that there is a new poll that shows Biden losing by 5 percentage points to Trump. And of course, with the caveat, if Trump's convicted, then Biden wins. But what do you make of, and one of my new favorite slogans or phrases is that was a choice. But what do you make of the choice of Biden has a strong and convincing win that, to your point you also just made, challenges a lot of narratives? And so the story this morning, instead of Joe Biden's win that challenges narratives, it is now there's a new poll out and Biden's losing to Trump. We can't deny poll results or anything else. So it's a prioritization, right? It's not that it should be reported on. So what is your take on that? And how do you feel about the way that they just sit there and they decide that they're going to put this poll out this morning and focus on that as opposed to Biden's victory?
I think I'm going to use a word. It's going to seem exaggerating. I'm going to seem extreme, John, but I'm going to use the word malpractice. And the reason I use that is because they are talking about polls when last night the South Carolina polls had Biden winning, but only at like 68, 69%. They had Dean Phillips coming in second, and a lot of people were undecided or whatever the case may be, but they only had Biden winning that by 69%. He had 96% of the vote. And so they were off by about 24 points or 26 points, whatever it is, right? For the media to say, here's this poll about Biden and Trump, when the poll that they were just banking on is South Carolina was off by 26 points. The margin of error in those polls are sometimes 3 to 5%. Those are massive swings, John. You know, elections, 3 points in an election is a blowout, right? So for them to be off by 26 points, and then for the media to double down and be like, well, look at this poll, seems like malpractice to me. It's very misleading. Also, they overestimated the New Hampshire poll by, remember, I think it was like 11 to 15% or whatever it was. I don't know if polling is broken. I don't. We argued about that. I think it's less significant than it used to be, especially after 2020, 2016. So I think it's irresponsible to lead with poll numbers because they've been so wrong, or they've been at least minimally inaccurate. You know, that's the worst case scenario. They've been extremely inaccurate. So I know the media is going to want to paint their own narrative. And look, MSNBC has a profit line, and so does Fox, and so does CNN. And their job isn't to as much tell the truth as much as it's to make money. And I don't think they're lying, right? I think that poll is real, but it's important to paint the narrative behind the poll, or at least preface it by saying, "Hey, this poll shows Biden losing to Trump. The same poll just had Biden off by 26 points in South Carolina," but they're not going to do that, right? So they want the horse race, and I think we have to be very careful this next year not to overreact to MSNBC or CNN. I think because we're such kind of junkies for it that we watch it or we have it on in the background. But it's nice to sometimes just turn it off and kind of exist in the real world. And South Carolina is more accurate, I think, than any poll, if that makes sense.